Welcome back. Let's talk about national security and focus on the activities of headers who have always been blamed for some of these escalations that happened. We're being joined in the program by the National Secretary of Miyetti Kotahore Fulani Social Cultural Organization and Pioneer Secretary of National Unity Pathfinders. He's also the former Secretary General of the National Youth Council of Nigeria, several other titles as well, Engineer Saleh Al-Hassan. Mr. Al-Hassan, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Let's begin with the, I'm happy that we're having this conversation with you because we always hear of farmer header crisis and we sometimes don't see to talk to the headers themselves. I'm happy there's a representation in this sense. So we would try as much as possible to look at all the issues from all sides today. But let's begin with the one we saw on the headlines. For me, it's difficult to process that foreigners, foreign headers in this sense, are the ones coming into our country, places like Benue and Plateau, to kill people, grab their land, occupy perhaps foreigners. The key word here is foreigners. So I would like your take on this as far as that allusion by the DHQ is concerned.
Good morning, viewers. I think this narrative of foreign headers being shown out anytime you have crisis, I don't know whose interest it is serving, because it's not even serving the interests of the innocent headers that have suffered over the years from attacks and counterattacks. So maybe the defense headquarters have more information. Since they're in charge of security, they can volunteer more information. But from our own perspective, this notion and narrative of foreign headers is a distraction, probably a continuation of the narratives of denying citizenship to the Nigerian headers. And we feel it's one of the challenges to finding peace in this country, particularly with respect to the herder-farmer conflict.
So let's explore what you just said, denying citizenship to the headers in Nigeria. Maybe you expand on that particular issue even further so that we understand exactly what you're trying to say.
You see, when you deny people citizenship rights by alluding that they are foreigners, then you deny them all the rights, you deny them inclusivity in governance, you refuse to give them social justice. So these narratives conveniently serve those that are promoting this conflict for the last 26 years. I think it's time we address that, because I can actually see how a foreign header can move either from Cameroon or Niger or Mali to be right at the north central of Nigeria. You see, this issue of headers and armed headers is also a narrative. Headers are not armed, but you have armed bandits and lawless criminals in our forests. All these are lumped to be called armed headers. We need to separate them. We need to know that the criminals are there in our forests and deal with the criminals. And the first line of victims of those criminals are the headers. We have lost so many headers. We have lost thousands of cattle in the hands of these criminals. But at the same time, we have been accused as the criminals.
But
so the challenge is now, even the institutions, yes.
Mr. Al-Hassan, if you're listening to the entire narrative, particularly the ones coming from those affected in these states, Benue now, for instance, the governor has said that these are Fulani from outside the country, because the type of Fulani that they speak, or is it the language that they speak, is alien to that which is indigenous to Nigeria. So it may not be an entire labeling of the Fulani of the Nigerian extraction. What do you say to that?
I think he is the chief security officer of the state. Maybe security information at his domain. He can give him such information. He can shed more light on this. But we that are working with communities in rural areas, I want to state categorically, emphatically, we don't have foreign headers in north central Nigeria and in Nigeria entirely. Where you have some elements of foreign headers is along the border communities, areas of Jigawa, Kebbi, part of Maiduguri, and some part of Adamawa State. What you have bandits and bandits can come from anywhere. Those bandits that are armed cannot be classified as herders because they are not herding cattle. If you see bandits with cattle, probably are cattle stolen from the herders, the indigenous herders we have in the communities. And let me tell you something. All herders, where they are localized, they speak the indigenous languages. That's why we're calling for national integration of the herders, community integration of the herders, so that you know the herders in your domain. And we cannot pretend that herders are aliens to any of the communities, particularly in the north-central Nigeria.
Are you saying that herders are not responsible for some of the atrocities we see in the country? Are you exonerating herders in that sense? Are you saying you don't have militia herders or criminal elements within the herder rank and file? Because that is, because whether you speak to people, we've spoken to literally everybody, from Benue to Plateau to where all of this happens. And there's a central thing: herders, herders, herders. Whether there's an infiltration of bandits in between. So are you exonerating herders in that sense? Because we see herders carrying guns and all of that.
We need to contextualize it.
Yes.
Most of the pictures you see of herders carrying guns are not even from Nigeria. But I'm telling you, the herders that we are working with in our organization, they don't carry weapons. I have been saying this consistently. But you have criminal elements that have taken over our rural areas. The herders are the first line of victims of those criminals. They rustle their cattle, they kidnap them for ransom. The reports are there with the security agencies, but it's always convenient for security agencies to blame foreign herders so that there won't be deep conversation on this issue so that we can address the root causes. That's why we're insisting that, look, if you say foreign herders, parade them. Let's see their nationalities. It's not a question of whether you speak a variant of Fulfulde or not. You see, we have been pretending in this country in the last 26 years.
But
I've been working on these issues.
But Mr. Hassan,
development agencies have been working on these issues, yes.
In Plateau State, those who are affected, in the latest round of killings, point accusing fingers even at, again, Fulani. They say that there was, in fact, a peace accord between them and the Fulani, but the Fulani are known to always breach the peace accord. So these are the concerns. If you go to Edo State, prior to that distressing event, the people in Uromi had complained about how their women were raped on their farms, some were killed on their farms. Again, the same accusing fingers is pointed at Fulani herders. So can you truly exonerate, criminal elements who are perpetrating this and giving the entire ethnic group a bad name?
You see, the context I want us to look at these issues. You see, for Plateau, I grew in the Plateau, I schooled in the Plateau. Today, my generation are the ones in governance on the Plateau. And we know the root causes of this crisis. Even the latest crisis are not supposed to be tagged farmer-herder conflict. How did it start in Bokos? It was a question of theft of motorcycle that led to those crises. So they now interpret any type of conflicts as farmer-herder. If you go on the Plateau now, there is no any crop that is there for herders to trespass. And the question I always ask, have we lost faith in our judicial system? You see, there are attacks and counterattacks. You have attacks that are followed by reprisals. And unfortunately, there is also politicization of the crisis. If you look at down south, what you have displaced bandits from northwest and other jihadist groups that have found it difficult to stay within the northern part of the country, probably because of the ecology. They are looking for thick vegetation. They move towards the south. And most of them now carry cattle, which are even for trading. Those are not herders. And herders that are now rearing their cattle peacefully, they are faced with double jeopardy. If you don't defend yourself, because security is not there to defend you, these criminals will come and rustle the whole of your cattle. For the Plateau, if the governor wants to be sincere, he has grown together with Fulanis, pastoralists, particularly in his local government. This conflict is just recent, and we know the drivers of those conflicts on the Plateau. It's likely political, because there's an agenda to expel the herders on the Plateau. The governor knows this. His godfather in politics, the former governor, Senator Jam, is a driver of that narrative, expelling herders on the Plateau. And they have renewed that call now. Look at the case of the so-called occupied 64 villages. I laughed when I see those stories in the media. Those are IDP camps that government never took care of. Herders were displaced from 43 villages on the plateau. And they now move into those those wastelands, mine lands, and considered a safe corridor for themselves. I want to be disputed. There is no single council ward on the plateau that is being taken over by the headers.
Mr.
So we have
Alassane,
to be honest if we want to have a solution.
Mr. Alassane, you made strong allegations against the former governor. He's not here to respond, so I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm sure he might be listening and want to answer you. But it's difficult to process to the effect that, given all that is playing out, we have asked you one question that I don't think you've answered. Are you saying, so let me repeat that question again so that I'll put you on record. There are bad and good people everywhere. Are you saying within your rank and file, you don't have criminal elements, militia elements, whichever word is convenient, that are perpetrating this evil in the name of whatever guise amongst you? Is that what you're saying?
You see, I'm telling you categorically that headers that are peaceful and doing their herding business have no business with this banditry. But you see, when you have state ethnic militia being masqueraded as vigilantes, killing innocent herders, the herders are left with no option than to resort to self-help. Some of these issues you see, the state governors are responsible for it. Instead of you to use conventional security to enforce law and order, you now set on an ethnic army and name it whatever from community security, vigilantes, and they do all manner of injustices to the herders. So I'm telling you, you can quote me anywhere, herders that are peaceful and grazing do not carry arms, are not responsible for these criminalities. But as you know, we have criminals in every ethnic group. Today, can you blame the Kanuris for the atrocities of Boko Haram?
So, Mr. Alassane, so just a moment, we're saying the same thing. So now we're looking, what you're talking about is we're looking for who to blame as the aggressor. What you're saying by extension is the fact that the herders are peaceful until, quote unquote, this government set up whatever vigilante to attack them, and they now attack, or by reprisal they attack them back. So you're saying by essence we have militia herders in that sense to defend the herders who are innocently attacked. Is that what you're saying?
No, you see, don't put words into my... It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you have criminal elements within our rural areas. Some of these criminal elements, you cannot rule out that they are also Fulani criminal elements, because arrests have shown that some of them are Fulanis. But does that translate? Herding is an occupation, it's an economy. But when you criminalize the economy, automatically you are criminalizing the entire ethnic group, which is wrong. You see, we have criminals, we have elements in the southeast, IPOP, killing people, burning economic infrastructure. You do not target Igbo criminals. Treat criminals as criminals. Treat bandits as bandits. Address them. In fact, the herders can be even a solution to this conflict because they are the first line of victims.
So, Mr. Al-Hassan, does the Miyetti Allah Kautal Fulani Social-Cultural Association, does it have a register of all members of its organization throughout the country? Because we see herders, even in our own community here, driving their cattle, even on roads. That's another conversation for another day. But we see them all over the country. So do you have a register of all members of your organization? That's on the one hand. So if you're saying that there are credible Fulani who ply their business throughout the country, should we begin to see more statements condemning attacks allegedly perpetrated by armed Fulani herders?
I want to correct that narrative. Don't say armed Fulani herders, because only the security agencies can categorically say that. You have armed bandits. You don't know, you cannot specify their ethnicity. You see, our organization have been working on peace buildings with the security agencies since 2014. The records are there. And with our structure, we have register of our members in every community. With the aid of information technology, I can just place a call to our chairman in Oyo State. He will tell me what is going on. But you see, if you are dealing with a demography that is fluid in the rural areas, that is constantly on migration, there are challenges in actually tracking who are responsible for these crimes. But I want to state, our headers, based on the reports we receive daily, they are first line of victims of these criminals. And we have to protect them, the state have to protect them, not to now hang it on their neck. They are not the security agencies to fish out criminals in the rural areas.
But
Even those that choose to cooperate, they are being killed daily.
Mr. Al-Hassan, pardon me. On the front page of the papers this morning, the Defense Headquarters is saying foreign herders behind attacks on Benue, Plateau communities. And whenever we hear about stories of these killings, we don't hear that Fulani herders killed en masse. What we hear is 50 indigents on the Plateau are killed. What we hear is people are killed in Benue and they're displaced from their communities. We certainly do not hear that Fulani herders of Nigerian extraction have been, killed en masse.
So I'm telling you, this has been the narratives right from the colonial period. The Fulani man is always the fall guy in these issues. It all has to do with competition on land resources. But the defense headquarters, they are the chief security. Maybe they have information that they give the public more to shed light on the so-called foreign headers. But I want to state categorically that what we have is armed bandits, criminal elements, jihadist elements infiltrating all over the country and aided and abetted by politicians who find interest in using them depending on the locality. So we must look at this thing within context and analyze it critically. Avoid these simplistic solutions to it. Integrate the headers in your states. Take census of the headers. It's not difficult to identify any intruder. Are we saying we cannot now govern our spaces?
Mr. Al-Hassan, you said something. You said something just now. Politicians who use some of them for their, for their own personal ambitions. Can you please expatiate on that? Because that is also part of the narrative about what is responsible for this.
You see, this narrative of conflict, what I want, especially the media, to help this country, is to look at what are the drivers. Now we're approaching an election period. All of a sudden, you have spikes of conflict that are being tagged harder farmer conflict in places like Plateau State, where this is not a cropping season. We are just going into cropping season. At the peak of the dry season, you say there is harder farmer conflict. Where is the trespass? Where is the judicial system? If today I trespass, I'm a header. If I trespass into your land, we have the police, we have the courts, we have the traditional settings. But what you see is just pretentious statements. People wanting to trigger conflicts to control the polity and not allow the citizens to think right, to ask them for accountability in the resources they are collecting in their states.
Well, Mr. Al-Hassan.
Gain political
all right, Mr. Al-Hassan, just a moment as we begin to wind down, because a lot of people find it, because the migration that we're talking about for whatever, for greener pastures for the cattle in this sense, is done by the herders themselves. And if this conflict has escalated for the number of years you have spoken about, it's difficult to accept that there are no militia elements in that sense, but that is your position. You don't live everywhere. I'm not saying it is or it is not, but it's just difficult to accept because there are killings on all sides. But what I want to ask you is, what is the solution? People have proposed ranching. Are the herders open to ranching in this sense?
You see, with the new Ministry of Livestock Development, that's why we will remain eternally grateful to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president of the country, for having the courage to create a livestock ministry. And that's where the solution is. If you integrate livestock development into the economy, particularly at the state and local government levels, you know the population of herders you are dealing with. You know the carrying capacity of the land. And it's a huge economy that can support livelihood in our rural areas. So with that ministry, we already have a solution in place. All we need is for key stakeholders to key in, give the government support, so that we can have a Marshall Plan for livestock development, where you have Marshall heavy, massive investment in infrastructural development, so that you can settle these herders in ranches, document them, and then increase the yield of their livestock. There is already a solution, but we need courage when we remove the politics inside and look at it as purely a developmental challenge. How do we manage our land sustainably for the benefit of the herders and the farmers? We can have this peace. It's not elusive. But when politicians find it conveniently to trigger conflict, to hold down the population of their states so that they can easily get whatever political interest they are pursuing, we will not get results.
Okay, there's a lot to explore, but we're totally out of time. Engineer Saleh Alassane, National Secretary Miyetti Alakota Hore, the Pioneer Secretary of the National Unity Finders and former Secretary General of NYCN. We pray and hope that there will be peace and there will be a solution and everybody will be brutally honest. That's the conversation we'll continue to have. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
We're not done with that conversation. We're going to talk to a security expert this time and look at all sides as well from the security point of view. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.